Now, I'll be short, and hopefully I have been. We're going to hear from Chris Singer, the Deputy, shortly, and then we'll both happily take questions.
Thank you, John. Chris?
Thank you. Thank you all for the opportunity to come and speak to you here tonight. It is an area where I've had the pleasure very recently to be the Gold Commander for the EDL protest that happened the other week. And one of the things I'd like to draw out of that is the immensely strong nature of the partnership that enabled us to deliver effectively in that instance. That was not a policing operation. It was a partnership operation. And what I wanted from the outset of that was to portray Telford in the way that I know all of you here want it to be portrayed, which is a positive, vibrant community that's safe for our people to be in. And that's why that partnership approach was so critical to generating the outcome that I know we achieved in relation to that. That plays a little bit into the background that I have. Strong operational background, but really privileged to hold the role that I now hold for West Mercia Police. And that sort of takes me back then to wanting to just explain on the back of the Commissioner's presentation then, where it is we're seeking to take West Mercia Police now in order to deliver the very best that we can for our communities. When I joined the police service, a standalone PC was me on foot patrol. To today, when actually we have network devices, such as this, that give people access to every corner of the globe in their hand. And with that, of course, as well as the positives, comes its perils. And we certainly see that locally and across the force. New emerging crime types that bring people into contact with criminals in a way that we never saw before. And later on this evening, when we talk about sexual offending, it is particularly pertinent to note that those devices expose our residents, our communities, to new types of harm that we haven't seen before. We are responding to those and responding very robustly to those. Alongside that, we will have seen modern slavery. Modern slavery has a footprint in this force as it does in any other force in the country. On pretty well a daily basis, we recover people from the back of lorries who have been trafficked, brought into the country, and are exposed to all sorts of risk as a consequence of the journey that they're on. It is something else that we need to respond to. Technology, that technological advance that has exposed new types of criminality, and we all just a couple of weeks ago saw Tesco's bank, was it I think 200 million Tesco's bank accounts hacked and such like. So there's that macro level of technological exposure to crime, right the way down then to attempts to access personal information or whatever else it might be at a very local level. So the technological challenges in terms of the crime types that we're facing are plenty. However, as you've just heard from the Commissioner, we also have the opportunity to harness that technology to our advantage. And at the moment, for instance, we have a pilot operating in Evesham where our officers are equipped with devices of that size that are enabling them to deliver their policing service without the need to return to a police station. And at the moment, are seeing them saving or generating about 2 hours a day of additional time that they can spend doing other things because they are not harnessed to a police station. Now, clearly, that is a direction of travel that we want to embrace. Alongside that, we are also developing the deployment of body-worn video cameras that will enable our officers to record what they see then and there, particularly useful in domestic abuse. And this force was one of the first in the country to pilot that in 2007. We're seeking to regenerate that pilot in 2017. And as I say, particularly for domestic abuse and other type crimes like that, where the court eventually will see how the victim was at the very moment that the police have attended, as closely following the report as possible. The sex offence position, we will come on to again, I know, later on this evening. But again, I want to stress my background. I was one of the first male officers investigating child abuse in the country. And I was used to a partnership position which has developed enormously since that time. Multi-agency safeguarding hubs, which are now embedded in the way in which we do things, are absolutely key to the sharing of information that will generate success. And of course, success in this area can be seen critically. The more accessibility we give to reporting, the more confidence we build for reporting purposes, the more reports we will get. And that is a good thing. Terrorism, I've talked so far about things that are affecting our communities on a daily basis. We cannot be blind to the fact that terrorism may affect us. I have a colleague who I know relatively well who polices in Belgium, senior police officer in Belgium. And when I phoned him after the wave of atrocities there, he said to me, the thing that is safeguarding you against similar events in your country is neighbourhood policing. The Chief Constable is absolutely committed to maintaining neighbourhood policing because it is that that gives us the temperature check in relation to our communities. It is that that keeps policing in contact with our communities. It is that that enables us to listen to and respond to issues of concern. So below the plan and with our vision for the organisation, neighbourhood policing is absolutely integral to that. New drugs clearly cause us some issues. You'll have seen the legislation has recently changed to legislate against what were perversely always called legal highs. That causes some concern for us. And particularly, there are vulnerabilities within some of our populations that we need to respond to. And then there are other factors that have an impact on keeping the public safe. Mobile phone use on the road. We've recently conducted a campaign to enforce against mobile phone use on our road, below our aim to keep our roads as safe as we possibly can. You will be astounded by the number of people that we detect using mobile phones. And of course, each and every time we do it, invariably people tell us it's a very important phone call. Well, I don't think it's as important as the life that you're threatening as a consequence of the action that you're taking. So we will maintain those sort of focuses on those sort of priorities. The West Mercia Police Vision will continue to develop our nationally acclaimed alliance that we founded in 2012 with Warwickshire. That will see us delivering on behalf of our communities. It will see us continue to define the way in which we work with our partners. And obviously as well, it will concentrate on the way in which we work with our workforce, our people, and the type of approach that John has already talked about in relation to the modernisation we want to go through. We want to embrace the sharing of premises, the efficiencies that can be generated as a consequence of that. We're in good discussion with our colleagues in the Fire and Rescue Service to exploit opportunities to do that. And our technology approaches, as you've already heard, are things that we want to embrace in order to deliver a more efficient and effective service. And in closing, our performance monitoring regime, I think, is very good. There is opportunity always for improvement, and we are never complacent. But I'm delighted to be able to report, and somewhat on Tom's behalf, really, things like domestic burglary. This year, in Telford and Wrekin, our domestic burglary figures against the same time last year are down by 32%. 457 crimes of domestic burglary for the same period last year, compared with 308 now. That is enormous. And that's against the pressures that we know can drive people to commit crime. That is a significant improvement. We're not complacent around that. At the same time, we're trying to drive up the satisfaction that people have with the service that they receive from us. I've set us a very challenging ambition, but for hate crime, those crimes that are really insidious and cause huge amounts of crime in our community, Tom and his colleagues to deliver 100% of people who've been victims of hate crime to be satisfied with the service that we provide. There are comparatively low numbers that we deal with in relation to hate crime. It is not beyond us to be able to give 100% satisfaction. And for violent crime, I want 90% of people to be satisfied with the way we follow up with them after they've reported crime. Those are snapshots of some of the ambitions that we hold as specific measures on performance. The Chief Constable, alongside the organisational vision, has a personal vision for the organisation. He wants to lead a strong, confident and compassionate West Mercia, and an organisation with officers and staff who always put you, us, the public first. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Chris. We now come to questions. Who wants to go first? Can you keep them short? Peter Scott.
Thank you.
We can hear you.
I will anyway.
Yeah, with the rest of them.
I'm aware of the work you've done on 101 and the improvements. Can you tell us how you intend to improve it even further, and more importantly, how you're going to improve public confidence in the 101 number, please?
Thank you very much. Yes, a number of ways that we're going to deliver it, improve it even further. Firstly, and I think most important, is a huge investment that we're making in a new call handling centre, which will be, yes, at Hindlip, but alongside that, investment in new technology. Technology is an enabler. It is not the means by which you solely deliver a service. However, we are replacing outdated systems, most notably our command and control system. That has a direct bearing to 101 because it will reduce the transaction time, the call time that we are currently taking to capture the information from people who are calling in for our service. Alongside that, the phone technology that we are using will also be improved. So simply the routing systems, it's called Symposium, so the routing system that will be in play in order to allow people to be routed to the right part of the organisation will also have a bearing on that. And then finally, in relation to the hand-on of the calls, which is an area where we do suffer some challenges at the moment, improvements in our radio telephony will come about that alongside the mobile data solutions to enable people to have much more direct access to officers, sometimes without the need to go through 101 at all. The other part to this is there is also, we have to be a smart provider of 101. So things like channel shifting information into other means of contact, email, live web chat, and those sort of things, moving people away necessarily from a reliance on simply voice and telephony. So those are the ways in which we're going to be addressing it and improving it even further.
Angela McClements.
Thank you. I'm glad you say that neighbourhood policing is crucial. I think we all do, and to get police away from the police station, and mentioning about improved technology. But I just want to sort of touch on something that affects my ward, which is the ward of Alston in Wellington. As you probably know, it's a diverse community, and just to let you know that the residents have recently taken over what was the Wrekin Community Centre is now the Alston Community Centre, which is fantastic news. What we have suggested, and the local police team were enthusiastic about it, was about them using a satellite office at the Alston Community Centre, you know, because obviously improved technology. We have got residents, like I say, a diverse community, people coming in, where they, at the moment, they have to go back to Wellington Station to do all their work, and actually they could actually stay in the community, you know, they could be working in the community, and actually more importantly being seen in the community there. So I just wondered if you could, I understand that it's not the case now that it's been refused. I wondered if you could look at it again, if that's at all possible.
Happy to give the commitment that this is why I want to see this investment in technology. The superintendent that sat over there can get his laptop and come and work in your community centre, but his cops can't. And that's not his fault, that's my fault, and we're going to put that right very quickly. We want to be part of the community solution, and we'll use technology to enable that to happen.
Nicola Lowry.
Thank you, Speaker. It's probably a question to both the Police Crime Commissioner and Deputy Chief Constable. As we know, it's of vital importance we commit dedicated resources in Telford to ensure we prevent CSE and really remove every opportunity possible to exploit and groom children. However, as been mentioned quite recently by the Chief Constable, I think on Radio Shropshire, social media and technology has potentially created an environment where activity may not be so visible and exposed our children to further risk. These perpetrators, we know, are extremely manipulative, and as identified, some of the victims of this type of abuse did not really consider themselves victims until much later down the line. CSE is not just a focus on child offences, but as we know, can be associated with varying forms of crime and abuse. So it was really just to ask, this evening, can you provide reassurance that the police fully recognise this issue and are really taking the necessary steps to prevent online exploitation and really ensure any cases that are reported to them are handled sensitively, appropriately, obviously in addition to a wider strategy to tackling CSE in our borough?
Yes, I can, on a number of levels. I am the regional lead in relation to the online prevent and pursue activity that seeks to make the internet a much safer place for people to be, principally children. That means I attend the national meeting with the national lead for this, Chief Constable Simon Bailey. And what I want to talk about is the layered approach in relation to this. We will never, candidly, we will never arrest our way out of this problem because the volumes of people who choose to use the internet to view indecent images will exceed our capacity. However, what we can do is this: we can target our attention. So I can tell you that the police service, in conjunction with internet service providers and others, are being very, very intrusive, appropriately intrusive, in relation to the way in which we have a presence on the internet. So that is both visible presence and in some instances a presence that is covert. I'm not going to tell you the specifics of that for obvious reasons, but it is there and it is present and operating today in this region. In addition to that, the internet service providers are responding very positively to the obligations placed upon them, particularly in terms of reporting matters that they will become aware of because of the way in which they provide the service. And for instance, over the last 2 years, the level of reporting from internet service providers has quadrupled on a monthly basis, and we expect to see that continue to increase. The next step then is particularly around the prevention agenda. And this is one again where, in fact, just before the meeting, we were having a conversation in relation to the opportunities for prevention. Our key messages to our communities, our young people, about what is safe and what is not safe to do online is absolutely critical. The figures in relation to a lot of our offences involving sexual offending with children, particularly in this area, are of similar age groups. And a lot of that, Tom, was it 40%? 41%. 51%, I'm sorry, 51% of the sexual offences, similar age groups and online. So this is about similar age groups interacting with each other. But the prevention message is enormously important. And we need to join that up with education providers right from the very early ages in order to bring people up to the right level of competence in relation to that. And that also needs to take in parents and the education for parents and guardians in relation to monitoring safely what internet activity is. So there's a number of levels of activity, and I hope that it gives an answer.
I've got 4 more speakers indicated. After that, I'm going to close the session because we've got an important meeting following that. And so, can I ask Nigel Dugmore to ask his question, please?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd just like to say thank you to the police for what you do. It's much appreciated. But could I just ask a question regarding the reassurance agenda? What's your response to the comments by the public and some volunteer organisations, such as the street pastors, that reported concerns are not being acted upon?
I'll happily give an answer from my side. It's the fact that when the community is saying to us something, we have a duty to listen. It is the professional's role then to understand the actions that follow. But if any of our community partners or anybody doesn't feel they are being listened to, then I will happily speak to them. I put all my details on the internet, and indeed anybody says they're not being given fair hearing by the police, absolutely come and talk to me. And the commitment is absolutely there from Anthony as well. We want to deliver that compassion that he talks about by making sure that our community feel that they are being listened to.
Thank you. Veronica Fletcher.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your presentation to us. I'm looking at the glossary and the mental health care crisis concordant, and I am concerned about people who are very vulnerable, people with mental health problems, and how they are treated when they're on the streets and when they may be arrested. Would you please tell me how you have progressed this to make sure that they are safe, secure, and have the proper facilities when they are in your care? Thank you.
Absolutely. The police don't get a lot of compliments about improvements to service always, but one thing they should be celebrated for is a dramatic decrease in the number of people with mental illness that end up in our custody blocks. We've seen over a 50% reduction over the last year, and that continues to go down. Indeed, with children, it is now in very, very, very low single figures. What we do need, though, is, and it's a responsibility of mine, is good relationship with our health partners to make sure that there is a health-based place of safety for them to be able to go to, which is vitally important. And what we also then have to do, and the next sweet spot after that, is to ensure that our uniformed cops, those frontline police officers, aren't then tied up for hours on end in that health-based place of safety. Because I know from first-hand experience, the last place you need to be when you're ill is in one of our custody blocks.
Eric Carter.
Thank you. I'll just refer you to on page 4 of your leaflet that we've got, which says your Safer West Mercia plan. And one item on there is Community Safety Partnership Strategic Assessments and Plans. As you know, you may remember, you spoke to Newport Town Council recently, and I raised this question, I'll raise it again, which is over CPE, not a CSC, but civil parking enforcement, which we are trying to, should we say, persuade this authority to take on board. I'd just like your confirmation, and perhaps your gentleman sitting next to you, that you are fully supportive of this being taken forward. I know the council are considering this now with their officers and cabinet. It's so important across this borough that we are not the only one in the West Midlands that don't have this in place. I hope you agree.
Happy to tell council there are 3 things that I believe in. First of all, I don't believe it's a police priority to be doing parking enforcement. Second of all, I believe in partnership. So if the council want to do it after they've gone through their processes, I will be a partner in making it happen. I've offered to the leader that I will contribute towards the capital cost of setting it up. And lastly, the thing I believe is you're the sovereign body. You are the directly elected people from Telford and Wrekin, so therefore you must go through your processes and come to the conclusion that you do as a democratically elected body. And I'm saying to you, the conclusion at the end of that, I'm here to help.
And the final question is from the Mayor, Councillor Evans, Ray Evans.
Right. Gentlemen, I'm going to take advantage of my position and ask you a very direct question. You will be aware, as I can see, that tomorrow is White Ribbon Day, and Telford is very proudly a white ribbon town. As Mayor, I am pursuing a campaign to raise awareness about domestic abuse. You may or may not be aware that in the West Midlands, the police introduced an initiative working with hairdressers earlier this year. And that initiative trained the hairdressers to be good listeners, a source of information, and provided them with a hotline to detectives when they observed or perceived that there may be domestic abuse. What I would like to do is ask you for a commitment to work with Telford and Wrekin to introduce a similar pilot here.
Lady Mayor, I share with you the concern in relation to domestic abuse quite clearly. Every single mechanism that we can use to generate reporting of, detection of, and support for the victims of domestic abuse, we would welcome. I've looked across at Tom and he's nodded. And ultimately, that is the vehicle for delivering it. Absolutely, we would support it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, John. Very informative session. As always, we could always do with another hour of your time questions, but we have a pressing agenda. So thank you, colleagues, for all what you've done there. Can I now pass over to the Mayor to start the meeting?
Councillors, it's with great sadness that we must reflect on the untimely deaths of two of our fellow councillors, Clive Mollett and Christine Mackenzie. Clive was ward member for Horsey and Lightmoor since 2008. He held a number of posts in the council's administration, including Cabinet Assistant for Appeals and Vice Chair of Appeals until 2011, after which he served on a number of committees. He also served as governor at Lightmoor Village Primary School. Christine served on Madeley Parish Council from its first meeting in 1988 until 1995, during which time she was vice chairman and chairman. She was also chairman of the Parish Council's Leisure and Grants Committee. Christine was also a member of Hadley and Montgomery Parish Council from 1994 to 1999, where she held a number of positions and was involved in a variety of community projects and campaigns. Our thoughts, obviously, are with the families at this time, and I would invite you to join me in a minute's silence in their memory.
Okay, Rachel.
You go to Mikey?
Okay, thank you. Before we get to the prayers part, can I remind members that filming, photography, recording are permitted by members of the public. So you may be filmed, you may be recorded by members of the public. It's part of our open council plan. Can I now call on Keith Osmond-Smith to conduct the prayers, please, to start the meeting?
Thank you, Speaker. So let's be still. Almighty God, in a world scarred by the evils of hate, crime, racism, injustice and poverty, we offer these prayers as we look forward to the shared future of this borough and its people. We ask that you meet with us tonight so that we may know the satisfaction of effective service and the peace that this brings. And we ask that you help us all to resolve the use of all our time more effectively in the life of service that we follow. And we do give thanks for the life of Clive Mollett. We ask that in these days his wife and daughter may know the comfort of your presence. We give thanks for the life of Christine Mackenzie. And we remember Michael and Carrie, Lord, and pray that they too and other members of the family and Alan, her husband, might know the comfort of your presence too. We also remember those who serve with us, who are laid aside through illness. And we offer up to you councillors Malcolm Smith, Mark Boylan, Adrian Meredith, and Clive Mason. We commit all our elected councillors and the officers and staff of this borough council, our town and parish councils, to you, so they may work effectively together for the common good, uniting to build a better society grounded in values and ideals that we may all share as a diverse community. Invest in each one, we pray, a real and personal integrity, a sense of right and wrong, of justice, of learning, of wisdom, and a love of truth. And develop in each of us the practices of care, compassion, justice, and peace, respect for one another, for the earth, and for our environment. We give thanks for what we have heard this night from the West Mercia Police. We thank you for the Chief Constable, Anthony Bangham, and for his Deputy Chris Singer with us tonight, and for the Police and Crimes Commissioner, and also for our local Commander, Tom Harding. And we lift these officers up to you, and all those that serve with them, Lord, in this borough, that are there for our benefit and for our good. We pray for their safety. And we are bold to commit ourselves in a spirit of friendship and cooperation to work together to bring about a better world now and for generations to come. We ask again for your blessings on all those who are involved in striving to bring relief to those caught in the trap of food poverty, those who are suffering financial hardship. And we thank you for all those who spend their lives trying to make ours better, for those in public service, and for all the volunteer Good Samaritans, and for those who give themselves to charitable works of service for the good of others. And we say again, thank you on behalf of all gathered here today. Thank you for your blessings. Thank you for life itself, for the measure of health which we need to fulfill our callings, for sustenance and for friendship. We ask that this council be granted wisdom to govern amid the conflicting interests and issues of our times, a sense of the welfare and true needs of our people, a keen thirst for justice and rightness, confidence in what is good and fitting, the ability to work together in harmony even where there is honest disagreement, personal peace in their lives, and joy in each and every task. Give us that assurance of what is pleasing to you and what will be for the benefit of those who live and work in and around this borough of Telford and Wrekin. And in this we ask for courage and compassion. In the name of Jesus. Amen.
Thank you, Keith. Item 2 then, apologies for absence.
Mr Speaker, we have apologies from councillors Karen Blundell, Mark Boylan, Adrian Meredith, Malcolm Smith, Dave Wright, Clive Mason and Karen Tomlinson.
Any other apologies from the floor? Andrew. Any other apologies? No. Item 3, declarations of interest. Any declaration of interest?
Mr Speaker, I've received declarations of interest from Councillor Sean Davis in the Youth Justice Plan. He appears in the Youth Court from time to time as a solicitor, and his firm also prosecutes on behalf of the Youth Offending Team. And I've also received the same declaration of interest from Councillor Arnold England, as he has a role as a Justice of the Peace.
Any other declaration of interest? No, no interest. Item 4, the minutes of the council. These are the minutes of the meeting of the council held on the 22nd of September and the extraordinary meeting on the 6th of October. Are they a true and correct record? Is that agreed? Thank you. Item 5 then, the leaders' report and announcements.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Welcome everyone, and a special welcome to John Campion, the Police and Crime Commissioner, the Deputy Chief Constable, and of course our own dedicated Police Commander for Telford and Wrekin, Tom. Firstly, can I just begin by expressing disappointment in yesterday's autumn statement. The Chancellor of the Exchequer failed to listen to not just this council, but the Tory-controlled Shropshire Council, your party, LGA, and a number of other sources about the crisis that we are now facing as a country in our adult social care. And that crisis is not just about a crisis for local government, but but also a crisis for the National Health Service. And it's notable that in the Chancellor's statement yesterday, he did not mention the word or letters NHS once. The increases at first glance of the autumn statement in the last 24 hours on the easy to measure measures already show an £85,000 pressure in year as a result of the government's announcements yesterday. We are currently implementing £30 million of cuts already identified. We already have a further £20 million of cuts to deliver by the end of the year. And the Chancellor's announcement yesterday does nothing to help us. No fairer funding for Telford and Wrekin, despite the failed words of the Conservatives opposite. Since our last meeting of the Council, the state of the future fit, and with it the future services at the Princess Royal Hospital, has become more uncertain than ever. At the same time, our PRH for Me campaign has gathered pace. The number of pledges is now 16,000, with over 450 personal stories from our local residents saying why they need an A&E and a women's and children's unit. Thank you for those who've helped with this, and I appeal again to anyone who hasn't yet pledged their support to do so. It is important that we go strength to strength with this campaign. The campaign has received the backing of many parish and town councils right across this borough, but also outside of the borough across Shropshire. Many businesses have demonstrated their support, and at the recent launch of Enterprise Telford's economic development strategy, a number of businesses were proud to pledge their company support to our campaign. I've sought the help of the Secretary of State for Health, Jeremy Hunt, to resolve the situation and ensure that both A&Es can remain open, while the Council has repeatedly sought answers from David Evans, the Senior Accountable Officer for Future Fit. In our first letter to Mr Evans, we outlined the Council's concerns behind our belief that the process was flawed, unfair and open to legal challenge. Then we stated that none of our concerns had been addressed and called on Mr Evans to come clean about Future Fit and the process being flawed. Our actions led to a pausing of the process. We faced criticism for defending our borough and its interests. We were even criticised as a council for simply existing. And let me be very clear, Mr Speaker, I will never apologise for Telford and Wrekin Council defending and being on the side of our residents and the residents of those people living in the area. Had we not held our position, the flawed process to downgrade the PRH would now be well underway and on the verge of a consultation with the NHS locally, not even knowing if they had the money to build the solution in the first place. It's like an episode of Yes Minister, Mr Speaker. The STP will be published next week, having called for it. But let me be very clear, Mr Speaker, we as a council have not been asked to, and we have not, and would at this moment in time not endorse the STP should it come forward. We'll continue to develop monitor developments, but let me be very clear to members, I predict the next 7 to 10 days will be crucial, and I warn members that I will call an emergency council meeting should the position to our hospital become critical. Last month, the representatives from hundreds of businesses and education providers joined the council and the Telford Business Board to the launch of Enterprise Telford, an economic development package that delivers real jobs. Huge strides around our Team Tech initiative. Last Thursday, the council was presented with a silver award from the Employer Recognition Scheme for the Military Covenant, signed by the Secretary of State for Defence. It recognises the work that we've done since we've joined the Armed Forces Covenant, and also the work that we've done as a council, as an employer, to recognise the service of our veterans. Well done to everyone involved. And just finally, Mr Speaker, the White Ribbon campaign, absolutely critical that anybody in this town, if they are victims of domestic violence or any other crime for that matter, report that to the police and to the local authority. I welcome the Mayor's work in this regard, and also her question to the Deputy Chief Constable. It's really important that people know that if they can't speak to a police officer, then they can speak to a hairdresser. Your Worship, Mr Speaker, it's clear, and for anybody who lives in the community, the hairdresser is always the font of knowledge. Finally, Mr Speaker, Christmas is coming, and among the events that we can look forward to is the Santa Skate at Telford High Street, the European Christmas Market at Southwater, and the pantomime performance, Sleeping Beauty. And just finally, Mr. Speaker, from my family to all members, staff, and visitors, have a very happy Christmas, and we look forward to seeing you all in the new year.
Thank you, Sean. We now come to the Mayor's announcements.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and Leader. Tomorrow, in fact, is, as I've mentioned earlier, White Ribbon Day, and we will be holding our annual White Ribbon Awareness Day in the Walker Room at Meeting Point House. Telford and Wrekin has been a White Ribbon town for the past 3 years. White Ribbon, as you may know, was inspired by the White Ribbon Pledge, which supports men who campaign to step up and positively make a stand, supporting the ending of domestic abuse against women. If you haven't already done so, please make your pledge online. Domestic abuse statistics show that 70% of incidents result in injury, and that on average 2 women in England and Wales are killed by their partners every week. But what does wearing white ribbon really mean? Gentlemen, it clearly defines that you will never condone or take part in or remain silent about domestic abuse against women. The effects of domestic abuse are endless and very impactful on the victim, their children and their family, and in some tragic cases can lead to death. This is why we must continue to support this White Ribbon Day and look to one day ending domestic violence against everyone. I'm therefore inviting you, particularly the gentlemen here in this room and anyone else you know, to attend the meeting tomorrow at Meeting Point House between 1 and 2 p.m, where you are invited to put an individual message on the campaign T-shirt that will be available there. So I look forward to seeing you.
Thank you, Ray. We now come to the public questions, and none have been received. So we're going now to item 9. I've moved item 9, Appendix G, up the agenda, because this is the important part of the meeting tonight, to report back for the 22nd of September, which said we got to bring a report back. The council got to bring a report back so we can consider the safeguarding of children. I'm going to get Paul Watling to move the motion, and then I'm going to ask our speakers to make their statements, because they can't take part in the debate. So I need the motion moving first, and then get the speakers to make their points, and then get it seconded and opened up to debate. Yes.
Appendix G actually has 3 recommendations. We now have 1 motion to discuss. Which of the recommendations are being removed? Could in his speech, could the gentleman tell us what actually we're voting for?
The recommendations, Councillor Fletcher, were for the Cabinet report, and it's a Cabinet report. And what we've done, in fact, is brought a report back to the full Council so we can endorse what is being said. If you read the paper, it is a Cabinet paper, and the recommendation was to Cabinet.
I thought it was a recommendation from Cabinet to Council.
If you read the item 2 on that, G, it says that Cabinet endorses the measures. It doesn't say Council. So there's been another motion put forward, amended by Councillor Watling, which I've allowed, which we need to go without discussion on whether it's there or not. It is a proper one.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This report provides a response to the motion agreed at full council on the 22nd of September. It also provides a copy of the draft action plan in response to the Ofsted recommendations. The council has always had an organisational priority of putting children and young people first and protecting and supporting vulnerable children and adults within the borough. As council are aware, we and our partners continue to improve the services we provide to children and their families, built on a strong culture of transparency, continuous learning and investment. Ofsted inspected the local authority children's services as part of their single inspection framework and provided the council with an independent view on its progress. They graded us as requires improvement to be good, but recognised that they could see that plans were already in place to reach good. Critically, out of the 5 judgment areas, Ofsted graded 2 of them as good. There were 11 recommendations from the inspection, a major improvement from the 34 recommendations from our previous inspection in July 2012. So we've gone from near inadequate in 2012 to near good this year. An achievement I note, and I hope everybody else notes. They said we should keep doing what we are doing, and that most importantly, they could see that children and young people are kept safe by the work of the local authority. They also recognised the strong leadership of the Director of Children and Adult Services and his senior team, and that progress had been helped by, and I quote, effective political backing and the hands-on support of the Managing Director. How we compare with others in the region that have been inspected, we are second best performing authority, second only to Staffordshire, who was graded as good. Considering the national and local financial constraints over the past few years, this illustrates the excellent work the Council and its partners are doing to ensure that children and families remain at the heart of our work. The draft improvement plan that you see before you against the 11 Ofsted recommendations was discussed with the Ofsted Senior HMI, Her Majesty's Inspector for Social Care, West Midlands, and the lead HMI from our inspection. They reiterated the key message of keep doing what you're doing and gave positive feedback regarding the actions taken to improve services since the end of the inspection. They were satisfied that the action plan covers everything it should and suggested some refinements which could be made before submitting it on the 5th of December. The report highlights the key findings from Ofsted, and I want to stress again, there were no recommendations from Ofsted to improve the Council's work on CSE, which was described by Ofsted as very strong. It's worth noting that the Deputy Lead HMI on our inspection is the Ofsted West Midlands lead on CSE and missing children. Our Cabinet's commitment to tackling CSE is clear, and at our July meeting we approved additional funding to support 3 further posts within the Council's dedicated CSE team, 1 senior social worker and 2 CSE practitioners. The Council and the Safeguarding Children Board already have an action plan in place to continue to develop our work in this area. This plan will be part of the interim progress report that will be presented to scrutiny in January. It's highlighted in recommendations in order to continue our improvement journey as outlined in the Cabinet report. We need to support the cost of implementing the identified actions. After the independent speakers we have here tonight, I would like to move the following, the recommendations. The Council endorses the measures set out by the Director of Children and Adult Services and Independent Chair of the Telford and Wrekin Safeguarding Children's Board for raising all children's services in the borough to a minimum standard of good and for ensuring that vulnerable children in the borough are fully protected. The Council delegates power to approve the final action plan to the Director of Children and Adult Services in consultation with a Cabinet member for children, young people and communities, and endorses the cost of implementing the action plan, which will be met initially from a combination of service one-offs and the corporate contingency in 2016, 17, and then will be built into our budget for 2017, 18 and ongoing. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Paul. Can I invite John Campion to say a few words, please?
Good evening. I would like to provide an update and some additional information for you around the subject, which has been a central priority for me since my election back in May. The sexual exploitation of children in our community is something that rightly concerns us all. Any instance of this crime is one too many, and we can be under no illusion that this horrific crime is happening in our communities. Recent media articles have painted Telford as the UK's child sexual abuse capital. For me, these headlines do not take into account of the context and the analysis that is needed to understand the issue and the work being done around it. I need to stress that there is no complacency. There is no burying heads in the sand. There is no denial that young people are being exploited here. This in itself is a key factor which sets Telford apart from other areas where child sexual exploitation has been an issue. The police, along with other safeguarding partners, have not only acknowledged the issue, they have continually made it a top priority for some time, and some clear, undeniable progress has been made. It is true that in the final quarter of 15-16, Telford had the highest national rate of recorded sexual offences against children. There were 17.6 offences recorded per 10,000 head of population. This statistic has been often quoted, but rarely scrutinised. Some supplementary statistics then from the most recent data available, which gives you some necessary context around the issue. In 37% of Telford's recorded sexual offences against children, both the offender and the victim are under the age of 15. In 54% of cases, both parties are under the age of 18. 89% of offenders are white males. 2% are Asian males and 1% are black males. Social media is increasingly a factor in sexual offences against children. Currently, 41% of cases involving victims under 16, there is no physical meeting or contact between offenders and victims at all. The crime is entirely perpetrated online. This is a trend that West Mercia Police have been quick to identify, record, investigate and educate about. On average, 12 crimes are recorded in Telford each month which have a CSC marker against them. The first quarter statistics for 16-17 show a slight drop in recorded offences in Telford, with other areas around the country now showing higher rates. I want to be clear though, that a reduction in recorded offences does not necessarily equate to success, because we know that this sort of offence is typically very underreported nationwide. Clearly, my preference would be that we do not have this crime happening full stop. However, if it is happening, we need the police to know about it in order for them to help victims and to bring the offender to justice. In these terms, higher rates of recorded crimes are actually a good thing. The indicated confidence in local police, victims feeling able to seek help, and the communities being alert to the issue. In terms of the work that I'm doing as your Police and Crime Commissioner, you will have heard earlier me refer to my Safer West Mercia plan. In it includes a firm commitment to put the victims and survivors first, and also to prioritise the most serious crimes committed against the most vulnerable in our society. CSE will naturally form a central focus within these areas. In September, I held a holding to account session with the Chief Constable, specifically around CSE. During that meeting, I was reassured that dealing with CSE remains a force priority and receives sufficient attention. Ongoing threat assessments are updated through work with partners. Work continues to establish models of exploitation with an emphasis on emerging trends. Awareness training has begun around key target location and workers, for example, hoteliers and taxi drivers. An education programme is being undertaken in schools. Work is ongoing around more effective, efficient collaborations with partners via new technology and better data sharing. All police officers are receiving vulnerability training, including specifically around CSE. Dedicated resources have been introduced force-wide to coordinate and drive CSE activity. Covert activity is being used appropriately, and there is work ongoing with the Crown Prosecution Service to maximise opportunities to deal with offenders. This list is far from exhaustive, and the full minutes of the meeting are available on my website. Whilst all of this activity is reassuring, it is also clear that there is more to be done. The police need to improve consistency around preventative work and ensure that it is joined up with our partners. There needs to be a better engagement with Neighbourhood Watch and other community-based schemes to increase awareness. More work is needed with partners to develop online learning resources. More intelligence gathering is needed nationally as part of an overall national strategy. Progress around perpetrator intervention should be reviewed and developed further. Good practice locally and nationally should be reviewed and shared more effectively. And the force should make greater use of the serious crime prevention orders where appropriate. As your Commissioner, I am committed to building on the progress made and the lessons learned in recent years. I will do everything possible to keep our vulnerable young people safe and bring the full force of the law down on offenders. I am clear that close partnership working is vital in achieving the best results. I appreciate this Council's ongoing support and the support of all our partners in Telford and Wrekin, and I want to build on this further, working together to build that safer, stronger West Mercia, including a safer and stronger Telford.
Thank you, John. Can I ask Andrew Mason, the Chair of the Local Safeguarding Board?
Good evening. The board, the Safeguarding Board that I chair, is a statutory body which brings together all those organisations with an interest in the safety and welfare of children. It has three main functions: to ensure arrangements are in place for those members of the board to work effectively, to assure that those arrangements actually do work by monitoring performance, and finally, when things go wrong, to commission reviews to allow partners to identify failings and implement changes to prevent those problems reoccurring. This role is totally independent. I discharge my duties with one aim in mind: to safeguard the children and young people of Telford and Wrekin. The board is also required to publish an annual report which contains an assurance statement which last year read, and I'll quote, "On behalf of the board, I would like to assure you that the Telford and Wrekin Safeguarding Children Board has, during the year, demonstrated effective safeguarding arrangements." I was therefore very concerned when I saw press reports which claimed that this was not the case with respect to CSE, and that Telford was being labelled as the UK's child sex abuse capital. These allegations directly challenge the assurances provided by the Safeguarding Board and therefore need to be rigorously contested. So I welcome this opportunity to demonstrate how, contrary to what is being reported, the board is fully fulfilling its duty to safeguard children in Telford and Wrekin. CSE has been a board priority for many years before I became chair. Our child exploitation subgroup meets regularly to monitor the incidence of CSE, review work undertaken by partners, including the CATE team, the specialised team, police and healthcare professionals, to support victims of CSE and ensure this support continues to be fit for purpose. We've also reviewed learning from many high-profile inquiries in Rochdale, Oxford, Rotherham, recommendations from the CSE National Working Group, and more recently, the scrutiny review recommendations. These recommendations are being implemented and monitored by the board, and progress will be reviewed at our next meeting in December and presented to the scrutiny committee the next day. Our quality performance and operations subgroup provides regular assurance that all recommendations are implemented and having a positive effect on outcomes for children, and are helping to raise awareness of CSE with children, parents, and the wider community. We're particularly proud of the work in schools to raise awareness of CSE through loudmouth theatres, thought-provoking drama productions, and the activities of the Children's Safeguarding Boards, which now operate in 35 schools throughout the borough. And carrying on from earlier comments, it's crucial that we continue this work to raise awareness. This work has been recognised nationally and is helping children understand CSE and the dangers of grooming, both online and face-to-face. Following Operation Chalice, the board commissioned an independent review which led to the development of our CSE pathway and the promotion of awareness raising in schools and closer engagement with families and communities. This year there have been two further inquiries, the Ofsted inspection, which has been mentioned, and the scrutiny review. And while this is going on, Alexis J's independent inquiry is giving opportunities for local historical victims to share their experiences in a safe environment. So I was still very disappointed that despite all of these positive outcomes, demands for a Rotherham-style inquiry continue. Just to remind you, this inquiry took place and looked at what happened in that time between 1997 and 2013. And I've taken the trouble, as I'm sure you all have, to study the terms of reference for the inquiry in that time. And having done that, I cannot identify any substantive actions which have not been undertaken by the reviews already referred to or are being undertaken by the ongoing work of the board. So that is why I was prepared, along with 9 others, to sign a letter to the Home Secretary in September, arguing that a further inquiry was unnecessary. However, we are never complacent, so I asked those questioning our commitment to provide evidence to the board of local failings that would justify the expense, disruption and diversion of critical resources away from tackling the issue today, would result from a further inquiry. I also committed the board to investigating any shortcomings that were identified. To date, I've received no further evidence. So if anyone here tonight can provide further evidence, I can assure you the board will investigate it thoroughly. The PCC has just provided a very full explanation of the reported crime statistics. And I won't say very much more on that, other than to say that actually using these statistics to describe Telford as the UK's child sex abuse capital is unjustified, misleading and dangerous. Child sex abuse specialists agree that reported figures represent the tip of the iceberg. There is widespread reluctance to report abuse to the police, and it's therefore very difficult to establish the size of the problem. The NSPCC estimates that for every child identified as being abused, there are a further 8 suffering from abuse. Raising awareness is therefore critical to encouraging more victims to come forward, and it follows that the better the awareness raising, the higher the reported figures. The Office of National Statistics, in its latest report on child sexual abuse, noted, "It's not thought that police recorded crime data provides a reliable indication of trends in sexual offences. The increases are believed to have resulted from both an improvement in the recording of sexual offences by the police and an increased willingness of victims to come forward and report these crimes." So on the basis of this evidence, a more accurate interpretation of the reported crime figures would be that Telford and Wrekin is one of the best in the country at raising awareness of child sex abuse and CIC. I would like to close with a plea to all of those taking part in this debate and commenting on it. The biggest challenge with CSE is getting people to come forward. Many victims don't know they're being exploited, are terrified of the consequences of exposure, feel they won't be taken seriously or be blamed for what has happened, or more worryingly, will be ignored because the authorities just don't want to know. So I would ask you, before you make accusations based on anecdote rather than evidence, before you quote headlines based on the misinterpretation of statistics, and before you undermine the excellent work in the borough to raise awareness of CSE, record it accurately, identify, disrupt and prosecute perpetrators and support victims, you reflect on the possible unintended consequences of your actions. Perhaps as we speak, a sexually abused young person in our community, plucking up the courage to come forward, might hear what's being said, conclude we don't care and decide not to bother. Reported crime figures will fall by 1 and another young life will continue to be ruined. CSE is a difficult and complex issue which requires a measured and coordinated approach. So let's all work together to provide this. So please, don't fail the children of young people of Telford and Wrekin by fighting imaginary battles when the lines of the real battle are so well defined. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Can I ask Claire Burgess of the Local Government Association, please?
Good evening. Just a very brief introduction. I'm Claire Burgess, and I'm the Children's Improvement Advisor for the LGA in the West Midlands and the South West region. I'm also a DFE advisor, working with authorities, particularly who have been judged inadequate by Ofsted. And I think that's relevant because I do know what good looks like, and I also know what inadequate looks like. So I've been asked to come here, I think this evening, just to give a bit of an independent view on Telford's position. But I think I can only do that if I set it in the context of the work that happens nationally and also regionally, because Telford has been a key part of that work. And I think that will enable you to see how perhaps externally, both nationally and regionally, Telford is perceived. So nationally, CSE has been, protecting vulnerable children and young people has been a key priority for many, many years. And the vehicle that we use to support local authorities in doing that is primarily around policy, so working very closely with Ofsted and the DFE, but also by promoting sector-led improvement. And that's, as many of you will know, we have quite a comprehensive offer of sector-led improvement. Some of it's specific around children's services. And we do use, in fact, you have colleagues in your offices who are actually Ofsted HMIs and are also peer reviewers for the sector-led improvement work that we do nationally. And I think you need to be proud of that because they're very, very well respected. They have very good knowledge, and particularly in the area of CSE, they have been used because of their experience. Part of my role in the region is to broker support for other local authorities, and I work with a network of colleagues in the other 9 regions. And I think it's always hard when somebody says, do you know of an authority that's doing this really well? And we get, I get asked that quite a bit for other colleagues in other regions, and they ask me. And I have to say, around your early help offer and how you work with those children and young people who, are emerging as having additional needs. And for CSE in particular, I always suggest Telford and Wrekin. You perform really well because you have a very stable workforce, which is very hard in the present climate. You have well-experienced staff, which again is very hard. And you do well in terms of doing the training and development work that you need to do, but also, as echoed in the early help work that you do, the other areas of child protection, safeguarding, you have very, very strong partnerships, and that is not easy. It really is not easy to achieve. So in the region, we have CSE as a priority, and it has been for some time. We have a Children's Improvement Board where key partners sit. So we have chief executives, we have directors, we have lead members. Your lead member, Paul Watling, was chair actually for some of it, as is your LSCB chair on the board. And why I'm saying that is because Telford and Wrekin is part of a much wider partnership, if you like, across the region, looking particularly at CSE, but also at other key elements around safeguarding and protection. We were lucky in the region to have some very specific Home Office sponsorship. And so a senior officer, civil servant, came and worked based out of Birmingham, around our vulnerable people, and that there was a subgroup around CSE, and as a result of that, we have well-developed, perhaps better than most of the other regions, well-developed policies, well-developed self-assessment tools around how we're doing on CSE, but particularly the tools that you need to work with children and young people. And I suppose taking that back to Telford and Wrekin, Ofsted is a necessary part of our scenery around children's services. It is the only service in your council that has a statutory duty regulated and is inspected by the regulators. And I think when people hear requires improvement, it implies it's a negative connotation, isn't it? Requires an improvement. And of course it's not good and it's not outstanding, but to put it in context, we have 2 outstanding local authorities in the whole of England. We have 26 inadequate local authorities, and the rest are in that requires improvement bracket. And I think for you here, you should be very proud of your services, because your requires improvement was very, very close to the top. You will be, you know, you were nearly tipping over into good. And I think you need to recognise that, because actually for your staff, that is really important, that the good work that they do is recognised, that it's a really difficult job to do. And particularly when you're working in the arena of CSE. I'm a social worker by background, and I've done this work many years ago, and this is a personal sort of observation. You need to build those relationships. You cannot do this in a process way. It takes time to build the trust. It takes time to get to build that relationship for that young person to be able to get the courage up to say what they need to say. And I think you have the right infrastructure in place in Telford and Wrekin. You have the right people doing the right jobs. And I think I cannot think what you could do more except continuous improvement, and you're very, very good at that. Telford and Wrekin are one of, out of the 14 councils in the region, you have probably had the most peer reviews, the most diagnoses. You offer your staff, both your members for mentoring of other authorities, but also your staff in terms of peer reviews and being part of Ofsted teams going into other areas. And that for me is really important, because you're a learning organisation, then you're going out, you're seeing what other people are doing, but you're also sharing your learning, and that can only improve the outcomes for children and young people. And through the LGA we recognise that, and that's why I'm here today, really, just to say that message. Okay.
Thank you, Claire. We'll just rearrange the furniture 2 seconds, and then I'm going to ask Paul Watling to read out the motion that he moved at the end of his speech. Yeah. Now we've got the furniture rearranged. Yes, please, Paul. Can you read out?
Okay. The recommendations are that the Council endorses the measures set out by the Director of Children and Adult Services and the Independent Chair of Telford and Wrekin Safeguarding Children's Board for raising all children's services in the borough to a minimum standard of good, and for ensuring that vulnerable children in the borough are fully protected in the future. Delegates the power to approve the final action plan for Ofsted to the Director of Children and Adult Services in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Children, Young People and Communities, and endorses the cost of implementing the action plan, which will be met initially from a combination of service one-offs and the corporate contingency in 2016-17, and will be built into the budget from 2017-18 ongoing.
Thank you, Paul. I assume you've got a seconder for that, Paul? Councillor Overton is seconding in reserve and he's right to speak. It's open for debate. Anybody wishing to? Yes, Jim Nelson. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So far as I understand, Mr. Speaker, and you can help me on this, I'm being asked to vote on recommendations which relate to this report in writing, which we all have before us or will have read. I'd like to thank the speakers for their information. I'm sure the gentleman who suggested what I heard was, don't speak unless you agree with me, didn't mean that, but that is how it came across. This is not about party. This is not about personalities. I wish to explore whether we can or should support the recommendations. The recommendations make reference to the report and action plan in Appendix G, and Appendix G is the administration's response to the unanimous motion from our last meeting, which motion, I'm sure we recall, was in 2 parts. The first part refers to the recent Ofsted inspection. My colleagues, and indeed all of us here, will have a view whether the Ofsted action plan in Appendix G will raise the borough to good. I personally want to allow the professionals to know their job. The audit tick box part of an Ofsted inspection, at least, may well be satisfied in future by these actions. Time will tell. However, I am still searching in this report for what I consider to be a comprehensive or even minimal response to the second part of the motion. I will remind us of the action we voted on. The motion required of the administration to define precisely how it will tackle the serious problems currently facing the borough. Very simple, entirely explicit, abundantly clear. But reading the report before us, you might ask, what serious problems? Our own leader has confessed in an open letter to the residents that crimes against children, I paraphrase slightly, are still being carried out in this borough. But the speakers this evening have reiterated that point. The existence and persistence of this unacceptable criminality is not challenged. So where in this report are the statistics, the history, the analysis, the reasons, or even acknowledgement of what these serious problems are? I find nothing. Why are children potentially vulnerable? So much so that we have to pass a motion calling for the borough of Telford and Wrekin to ensure that, I quote, vulnerable children are fully protected. From whom? What is the scale, the frequency, the location, the groups, if there are groups, involved in these serious problems? The anecdotal evidence is compelling and ongoing. Where are the facts? And particularly, where are the facts written down? Either the administration do not know, the PCC is not a member of this administration. I don't think he is. In which case, I am certain many residents feel that the administration should know. Inquiry immediately. Or the administration do know, not from the PCC standing up and talking to us, but written down, and they cannot or will not say. It is for each individual member to ask themselves why. The recommendations only tackle half the job, and even that is open to debate. Serious problems remain, members. They require serious solutions, and soon. The recommendations fail in its job. Do not support them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Shirley Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the lead member for scrutiny, I actually welcome the opportunity tonight to express thanks to all involved in the CSE scrutiny review. The report was in-depth and included all members of the cross-party scrutiny committee, and all members were content with the findings. And although there were recommendations from the report, there were no causes for concern. Not a single member of the committee expressed any concerns at that point, and they had a full year in which to do so. The report also received full cross-party support prior to its submission to Cabinet. I would like to personally thank fellow members and our officers who've worked extremely hard to ensure our children in this borough are safe and protected. I feel I really must highlight the work of the Director of the Children's Services, the Assistant Director, together with the service delivery officers and all of their staff. Their hard work is also reflected in the recent Ofsted report. When 7 independent inspectors visited the authority, it was not a tick box exercise. If you've been through an Ofsted, you will know that. To assess how we look after our vulnerable children, Telford and Wrekin Council were praised for its strong commitment to tackling child exploitation in the borough. It went on further to praise the work that has been carried out since Operation Chalice, where 7 men were jailed in 2012 for a total of nearly 50 years for running a sex ring in the town. Our figures may be high, but this is because our children feel safe and confident in reporting. And I hope that the politicising of this issue does not stop this. I am proud of the work of the officers, and I welcome the examination of this effectiveness of our services. This should not be a party political scoring issue. Protecting our children from harm has to remain a top priority for everybody concerned. As a teacher of young people, those at risk, I spend my working life trying to protect them. I take them to Watch Loudmouth and other CSE educational activities, and I would welcome the support from across the floor on tackling this issue and supporting our officers in doing this. Safeguarding our children is a responsibility of us all and is the most important priority here.
The chair, I would call the chair of the Children and Young People Scrutiny Committee, Councillor Kevin Guy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We've heard calls today for an independent inquiry again, as we had in the last meeting. We've had a debate in the Palace of Westminster for another inquiry. We were all also aware that Government Select Committee would be seriously concerned if local authorities were to hold off any investigations pending the outcome of the J inquiry. This is precisely why we carried out our own independent scrutiny review into the agencies in Telford, how they're working together to tackle sexual exploitation. On the 30th of October 2013, an independent report was published by the Shrewsbury-based community interest company, New Start Networks, into the relating children's abuse through sexual exploitation covered between the periods of 2008 and 2013. Effectively, the work that an independent inquiry into an historic abuse would cover has already been done by an extremely detailed New Start Networks report. This is why we have in place the Child Exploitation Care Pathway today, and we also have established the Family Connect services that work extremely well that Ofsted have mentioned earlier. The New Start Nexus report concluded, I quote, "Telford and Wrekin is to be commended for the work it has undertaken in order to protect young people from CSE. In this review, it has become clear that the focus is on the rescue of young women involved and the knowledge and resources involved very quickly from 2006. A specialist team was created, systems were put in place, and multi-agency working was encouraged as part of the rescue process. That is also why this year's Ofsted inspection for Telford and Wrekin Children's Services found that work with children and young people at risk in sexual exploitation is very strong. The local authority has been a champion for tackling this issue. We are a transparent council and we welcome examination and scrutiny of our services. This is not an issue that is being swept under the carpet, which some of the opposition may think. This year alone, Telford and Wrekin Council's Children's Services reviewed by Ofsted. Telford and Wrekin Safeguarding Children Board has also been inspected by Ofsted and its work has been rated as good. The Department for Education and the Home Office have sought and received further information and reassurance from the Council and Ofsted. Both departments have responded and recognised the excellent work being carried out by Telford to tackle CSE, and we are looking forward to sharing some of the Home Office and DFA officials in January. So more information with them. We have heard that Ofsted inspection could not be clearer. They said, work with children and young people at risk in sexual exploitation is very strong. The local authority has been a champion for tackling this issue. There is a strong commitment from the local authority and its partners to tackle child exploitation. Consequently, young people receive comprehensive and well-coordinated services that make a positive difference. The inspector who wrote this was a national lead for CSE and Ofsted. I think she would be able to spot if there was an issue in Telford and Wrekin. This is the reason why we have seen an increase in referrals to our Family Connect services. It's because our service is so good, as was illustrated by our earlier speakers. The local authority has also championed to work to tackle child exploitation and provided leadership to other partner agencies. It has worked well with the local Safeguarding Children Board and other agencies to put in place a clear and effective strategy framework for this work. Targeted with the local authority has led improved communication and joint working between children's services and schools in Telford and Wrekin. Schools are positive about the advice and support they receive from our services. They appreciate the positive difference that is made, which includes working on children missing from education and tackling child exploitation and radicalisation within our schools. I've heard people say that Ofsted failed to spot CSE as a problem in Rotherham. In 2014, Rotherham was found to be inadequate. Comments included arrangements from tackling CSE were fragmented and the local authority and its partners had not identified these weaknesses. Since this time, Ofsted has undertaken a thematic inspection of our arrangements of CSE in a number of local authorities and revised their inspection approach to ensure that they look at CSE in more detail, which was alluded to earlier. This approach was adopted in Telford. Our Scrutiny Committee has made 38 recommendations, most of which have been agreed by the Telford and Wrekin's Safeguarding Board and Telford and Wrekin's Cabinet as well. Their implementation will ensure that all local partners are continuing to work together to prevent CSE, support and protect victims, and prosecute perpetrators. The CSE Scrutiny Committee recommendations, together with Ofsted's action plan.
Can you start?
I will conclude. Yeah. Right. I cannot stress strongly enough the continued commitment to investigate and scrutinise CSE within our borough, which is why we have our next 2 meetings are going to focus on this issue. Good progress has been made in tackling the issue in recent years, and we will continue to make this. There is no complacency within the scrutiny board. Safeguarding young people and reassuring the communities and bringing offenders to justice remains our top priority. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Nigel Dugmore.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Do I get 10 minutes as well? Right, Mr. Speaker. Firstly, may I thank the guest speakers for giving us an overview.
Councillor Dugmore.
Sorry?
He was the chair, I did introduce, was the chair of the scrutiny committee. And with that, I gave an extra minute.
All right, it wasn't on the time.
10 minutes. I've got a clock in front of me.
Very good. So have I. It's there. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Right. Firstly, may I thank the guest speakers for giving us an overview of the current situation from their perspective. I look forward to their return in the new year to give us an update on what progress they've made. Regardless of political persuasion, we are all fully committed to the protection of all children in the borough. Indeed, at our last meeting, there was unanimous support for our motion to receive this evening a comprehensive plan to raise children's services to Ofsted rating good and also receive detailed measures that this administration will introduce to protect children from exploitation. Well, we have a draft action plan of sorts. However, is it not premature to be asked to endorse a plan that isn't finished, particularly on such an important subject? With regards to this draft plan, I have no doubt of the commitment of those who are involved, though I do question some of the actions it contains, finding some of them a bit vague and in some cases immeasurable. As with all such plans, the actions should be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic and time-based, so-called SMART objectives, the idea being that the plan can be reviewed at any time to monitor progress. This would make management and governance more effective, both of which Ofsted highlighted as requiring improvement. This plan contains some actions that has a success criteria of only 75 or in some cases 90%. But quite frankly, this is not good enough. Surely we should aim to provide all children in the borough with the same level of service. And Ofsted, as Ofsted states, services received by children in Telford and Wrekin are not yet consistently good. And the independent reviewing officer service is not providing enough scrutiny and does not have a clear overview of service performance. Improvements in this area will only be achieved with a robust and clear action plan. This draft plan will not deliver that necessary improvement, and no wonder Ofsted says that the plan needs refinement. Mr. Speaker, this borough sadly is branded in the press as the child sexual exploitation capital of Britain, being the worst in the country, beating Rochdale and Rotherham. If the figures didn't indicate this, then it wouldn't be reported. We all asked at the last meeting for the detailed measures that were being put in place to tackle this issue. Yet where are they? It's hardly surprising that leadership, governance and management requires improvement if a clear request by members of this administration, including the leadership, is ignored. Rest assured, as the opposition, we will not be swayed in our determination to stamp out these heinous crimes and bring the perpetrators to book. And if that means we have to upset a few people and institutions on the way, then so be it.
Can I ask the people to listen, the councillors to listen in silence to what has been said? It's a very serious subject, and there's no call for heckling across the floor. Councillor Fletcher, Ian, that is.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As part of the recommendations, we have to approve the Getting to Good Children and Family Services Ofsted Improvement Plan that's before us in the papers tonight. Putting on my hat as an auditor, I've gone through all the actions here in detail and their outcomes and their success measures. And I'm afraid I must repeat some of the words of my colleague, Councillor Dugmore. These are not smart actions. They're not specific. They're not all measurable. They're not all achievable. They're not all relevant and they're not all time limited. That means that this plan, nice as it sounds, some lovely words in here, lovely aspirations, but you can't measure aspirations. We want a proper action plan that is measurable and can be verified. And this plan does not. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Ian. Councillor Stephen Bentley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mine's really a question. It's on clarity. Could somebody give me an understanding on the leadership, management and government hierarchy? Because the way I understand it, that's what this motion and the recommendations within this report pertain to. And that is the area, one of the areas that requires improvement. Why would anybody in their right mind be actually endorsing those recommendations if that is an area that requires improvement?
Can I ask the mover of the motion to take that point of his right to reply? Councillor Andrew Eade.
Thank you, Speaker. First of all, I would like to thank all three speakers for taking the time and trouble to give us the benefit of their views tonight. They're certainly most welcome to do that. And I must say, though, some of the presentations have been in stark contrast to the aggressive response that we've encountered at some meetings with council members and other officials. As a group, we have even been singled out for causing the EDL visit and further informed that our concerns are, as we've heard tonight, are merely based on hearsay. Perhaps even worse, the cabinet member responsible for children stated that a Sunday Mirror reporter only penned an article about Telford and Wrekin in order to promote a book written by one of Telford's past CSE victims. I have to say that I find that pretty distasteful. However, perhaps the most galling charge of all that's levelled at us by a cabinet member and a senior council officer who have accused us of only being motivated by politics. Both should know better, and let me say that that is untrue, it is undeserved, it is deplorable, it is not helpful, and it is wholly unacceptable. It is something which I will not tolerate. Indeed, to the best of my recollection, Mr. Campion, who's spoken tonight, is also a Conservative, and yet we may hold a different perspective, making complete nonsense of these spurious accusations of political motivation. Quite frankly, how dare you say that? How dare you? This is a very serious subject and one which we care about deeply. What is undisputable is that Telford and Wrekin has the highest incidence of child sex offences for the year up to and including September 2015, a position that's above Stoke and Rotherham. It has been asserted again tonight that as victims and the community now have a heightened awareness of CSE in the borough, they feel it easier to report such crimes. Well, I, for one, sincerely hope that they're right on this, but I've not been presented with any evidence to back up this assertion at all, which seems little more than hearsay itself, and it doesn't seem to be based on any facts at all. Until now, no one at Telford and Wrekin has been able to quantify the scale of the problem that we're facing in the borough. Neither has this administration even complied with the first recommendation of the council's all-party and non-political scrutiny committee to make the facts about the scale of child sexual exploitation in the borough accessible to the public. And that's after 6 months after completion of the scrutiny review. This administration seems to have taken more time, trouble and energy in negating our previous motion calling for action rather than trying to quantify the scale of CSE that we face in the borough. I think in many respects it would be better and more creditable for this council if we could actually sit down and talk about this in a rational manner and not have this sort of meeting sprung on us as a surprise, and it must have taken you a long time to organise it, as happened with an email on Monday. That is not acceptable, and that is not working together to try and deal with this problem. Speaker, our original motion received all party support and, as has been said, was in two parts. The first dealt with the Ofsted report, which I do not believe, as for the reasons already been saying, has been fully dealt with. And the second part was about CSE, which doesn't appear to be being dealt with at all. I ask all councillors present to search their consciences and ask themselves this question. How confident are you that we do not have a major problem in the borough? Available evidence would seem to suggest that we do. These are our children and grandchildren. We should apply ourselves 110% to make sure that they are safe. This is not a party political issue, but a fundamental issue of protection and assurance for vulnerable children. Now, I move a recorded vote and will allow no member any hiding place or opportunity to duck this principle. The decisions that we have to make as an authority are difficult. Dealing with CSE is difficult, but the way this council is conducting itself at the moment makes that task almost impossible. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. We'll get to that vote.
Move a recorded vote.
I've not called for the vote yet. And the rules quite clearly state that it needs 8 of you to stand up and say so. But when I call the vote, but it's noted that you want a recorded vote. I've had no further indications, so Richard Overton, do you want to do your seconding and then call upon Paul Watling to wind up?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I won't be very long. I would like to thank the speakers tonight, the Chair of the Safeguarding Board, the LJ and the Police and Crime Commissioner. And unlike some in this chamber, we have listened to what you have told us. We have heard that this authority and its partners are identifying and dealing with CSE. This is an issue that the Council and its partners take seriously. It is a priority of this administration and its partners to make sure our communities are safe. CSE is an horrendous crime, and we will do all we can with our partners and the police to bring those who exploit the most vulnerable to prosecution. We need to build on the ongoing work in relation to prevention, and we will do all we can to keep our children safe. And as Ofsted said, keep doing what you're doing. I second the motion.
Councillor Watling, will you reply to the debate, please?
I will do.
Can I
again,
say, Councillor Watling, on this occasion, the right to reply is 3 minutes.
Okay.
Because the complexity of the problem and the length of debate we've had, I'll give you 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
No more than that.
Thank you. Can I start by saying how disappointed I am with the response to this debate from the party opposite? You've heard from independent people, not from this administration, about the work that is happening in Telford and Wrekin on CSE. You've heard about how highly that work is thought of, and yet you still stand there and say the things you've said about the work that those officers are doing. And I am appalled that you would use your power that you have to stand in this chamber to actually put at risk that good work. And that good work is there, not because I say it's there as lead member of for children and young people here in Telford and Wrekin. It's there because Ofsted say it's there. It's there because independent safeguarding board says it's there. It's there because your own party members stood at a scrutiny committee and said there wasn't any issue that they wanted to pick up from outside the area. So I am shocked that you still have the gall to stand up and make the political comments you're making. As you know, I'll go through some of your points. Councillor Dugmore, you know, our statutory duties are really important. You know, I'm really glad that the people who are judging those that action plan have a long history in judging those action plans, and knowing where the Ofsted inspectors who came last week spoke to us about the action plan, saying it was commended it as a good action plan. I'm really pleased that they've done that, and I'm surprised that you don't take that into account when you spoke. What I'd also like to say, Councillor Fletcher, it's you know, you know, you reinforced what Councillor Dugmore said. I'm surprised at that, because you know how important, how difficult it is to convince Ofsted inspectors. As a school governor, I'm sure Ofsted inspectors whether an action plan is effective. Again, I'll say it again. Ofsted have said this is an effective action plan. As for Councillor Nelson, did he listen to what was said? Did he actually listen to what was said by people who came here to speak?
On this.
Can I finish what I'm saying? Sorry, Councillor Nelson. I'm asking you whether you listened to what was said. What was said was very clear. There is an issue in Telford and Wrekin. We're very clear there's an issue in Telford and Wrekin, but we have got in place the best partnership working that we could possibly have to deal with that issue. And I would say to you again, Councillor Nelson, as I've said to you before, be very careful how you say what you're saying, because if one young person is put off at reporting what we know is a heinous crime, it's on your head, and it's on all your heads. So we need to be very clear. We need to be very clear that what we are doing, independently reviewed several times, what we are doing is positive in terms of our approach to CSE. Ofsted have said that to us, the independent scrutiny have said that to us and given us things that they would like us to do. We will report back to them in January. You will see the detailed plan of that report in January, and to suggest we are sitting on it and not dealing with it is inappropriate, and I'm shocked that Councillor Reid would suggest that our officers would not actually deal with issues around safeguarding for children and young people in this town. So what I would say to you is, Ofsted said it, and I'll say it again, because obviously you didn't hear it. What Ofsted said was they could see that children and young people are kept safe by the work of the local authority. They also recognised the strong leadership of the Director of Children and Adult Services and his senior team, and that progress has been helped by effective political backing and the hands-on support of the Managing Director. Now, I can't get a better endorsement than that. And what I would say is, listen to what's being said to you, read what's in the reports. Thank you.
Right. Councillor Bentley, point of order, is it?
It is, yes. I believe I asked a direct question of the Cabinet member, and I don't believe I had a response.
It's not a point of order. If the Cabinet member...
What is a point of order?
Just a moment, Councillor Bentley. If the Cabinet member, in his right to reply, wants to omit certain things, that's his prerogative. And I'm sure your leader will enlighten you on that. It's what, if they don't choose to say anything, because your leader's done that in the past. So if it's not a point of order. Perhaps you ought to ask him outside the meeting.
No, I'd rather hear it publicly.
What was the question?
Well, I forgot it now, but I'll remember it in a minute. When we take the vote, it'll come.
Can I ask you to talk to him outside the meeting? Right, we're now going to move to recorded vote. We requested a recorded vote, and that's what we're having. Debbie.
Okay.
Quiet, please.
Councillor John Ashford.
Abstain.
Councillor Steve Barnes.
Abstain.
Councillor Steve Bentley.
Abstain.
Councillor Andy Bareford. Councillor Stephen Burrell.
Abstain.
Councillor Eric Carter. Councillor Lee Carter. Councillor Liz Clare. Councillor Graham Cook. Councillor Sean Davis. Councillor Nigel Dugmore.
Abstain.
Councillor Andrew Reid. Councillor Arnold England. Councillor Nathan England. Councillor Ray Evans. Councillor Ian Fletcher. Councillor Veronica Fletcher. Councillor Joy Francis. Councillor Conor Furnivall, Councillor Kevin Guy, Councillor Miles Hoskin, Councillor Janice Jones, Councillor Terry Keenan, Councillor Adrian Lawrence, Councillor Jackie Loveridge, Councillor Nicola Lowery, Councillor Angela McClements, Councillor John Minor, Councillor Leon Murray, Councillor Tim Nelson, Councillor Richard Overton, Councillor Jane Pinter, Councillor Gilly Reynolds, Councillor Shirley Reynolds, Councillor Steve Reynolds, Councillor Hilda Oak Rhodes, Councillor Kuldip Sahota, Councillor Peter Scott, Councillor Jackie Seymour, Councillor Rob Sloan, Councillor Charles Smith, Councillor Barry Tillotson, Councillor Bill Tomlinson, Councillor Chris Turley, Councillor Paul Watling.
The motion is clearly carried. Won't ask for abstention, they've all done it. So the motion is carried. We now get back on track again. We'll go back to item 8. Oh. Can I thank the speakers who are now departing? I don't blame them, which I would do with them. Thank you for your attendance and your contributions. Can we show our appreciation to the speakers, please? Right. We now go back to item 8 on the agenda. It's a bit of a mess, the agenda tonight, but don't worry about that. It's cabinet decisions made since the last meeting. Sean, do you wish to make any statement on decisions since the last meeting?
Sorry, Mr. Speaker, I've stood in shock. No comments.
Any questions? Andrew?
Yes, I got 3 questions, if I can, all on the same item. It's 2.3.2 on school organisation. And I'd like to ask the Cabinet member with responsibility for education if since the Cabinet meeting last week, she now understands the issues surrounding the lack of public transport from Muxton to the Priory School for pupils who are currently bused to Newport, and the dire effect of extra car traffic will have on the highway infrastructure in that locality. I would also like to ask if she understands that due to the council not collecting developer contributions over the past 5 years, and the council not currently qualifying for free school funding, there is no money available for future secondary school build. If she understands, perhaps she could tell us how and when she intends to raise funding to do that. And finally, perhaps she could explain to me why I've not received a simple and what should be readily available information from her officers on a number of secondary school places currently available in the borough and the projected number of secondary pupils who will require places over the next few years, when I asked for that information 10 days ago.
Cabinet member, answer that.
Thank you, Councillor Reid, for those questions. I'll answer them in order. In regards to the public transport question, I've actually this evening been looking at the bus routes, and there is a bus route between Muxton and Rockford Wood. It's bus number 5, and it runs in the morning as well, so you can get there in time for school. But in relation to that, we are having discussions about how we can improve the public transport, but there is a bus which runs between Muxton and Rockford Wood, so it picks up at post office, for example, and can drop you off at the Lamb Inn, which is just a couple of minutes walk to the primary school. So that will answer your first question. In regards to the second question about secondary school bill, we do have developer contributions from the Section 106 monies. And in regards to the third question about school places, I didn't know that you had requested that information, so I apologise that hasn't got to you, but I can tell you exactly how many surplus places we have currently in Telford and Wrekin. So for primary places, we have 8.6% are surplus, which equates to 1,443 pupil places in Telford and Wrekin, which is at least enough for the next 3 years. In regards to secondary school places, there are 12.4% surplus places, which equates to 1,547 places. So hopefully that will realise some of your fears aren't correct. But I hope that you do promote the consultation when it's taking place. Thank you.
Councillor Veronica Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm drawing your attention to the school boundary to bring Muxton into Telford Priory catchment area. Muxton has approximately 3,000 homes at present and 700 under planning permission. Prisley is in the catchment area and has 2,840 homes, but it also has planning permission for 2,800 homes. So the extra homes to be included in this catchment area equates to 6,500 homes. How will you cope with this enormous pressure on school places? And have you factored this into your plan, especially as they're all going to go to Telford Priory? Based on DFE guidelines, 1 in 4 ratio means a potential increase of 1,600 pupils by 2030, besides other new homes in the catchment area. This equates to 1 new secondary school. You wish to save £40,000 on bus fares, but this increase in pupil numbers could mean a spread of up to £20 million on a new secondary school. What plans are in place to cope with the potential rise in school places? Thank you.
Councillor Reynolds, Julie, that is.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. I'd appreciate if you could send the full question to me because it was very long, so I probably didn't pick up all the points. In regards to the secondary school in Prisley, obviously that school wouldn't have taken place if it hadn't been for the Labour administration's policy on BSF. Prisley wouldn't have had its own secondary school, so hopefully you can at least welcome that that is the case. In regards to the £40,000, that isn't the reason for this. In regards to this paper, this is to define the next few years of school places, so it's not driven by cuts. And I think it's a bit disingenuous to suggest that that is the case because it really isn't. It's to make sure that our school places are sustainable going forward. And what was your direct question? What was your central bit? Because it was so long.
My direct question is, there are 6,500 homes to go into the catchment area for the Telford Primary School, which equates to, under the DFE guidelines, 1,500 new places, new pupils to go into the Telford Priory, which is the catchment area. So how are you going to cope in that Priory school when there's 1,500 children more from just 2 areas of the catchment area to go into it over the next years?
Thank you for reiterating that. In regards to Prisley, Prisley's catchment area isn't currently just the Priory. Obviously, it also has HTA. So it's not a case that they will all be going into one school. Also, in terms of build out, those houses won't be built up overnight. So that's students who will be coming in year on year. So it won't be an influx. But if you actually look at the paper, it does explain that we've incorporated all the known buildings, projected buildings, and obviously it's open to consultation. So please make your views known through that as well. Thank you.
Councillor Dugmore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've got 3 questions. First one's 2.2.7. Highway assets. Would the Cabinet member agree that if the Japanese can repair a large sinkhole in 48 hours, that management of the contractors involved in the roundabout upgrades needs to be reviewed, as a 6 to 8 week job has taken 6 months, and only now, due to public pressure, are we getting heavy with the utility companies. I'll give them one at a time, and then the cabinet members don't forget what the question
Can I remind you, there's a question on the order paper about roundabout by 3 of your colleagues.
Still highway assets.
Councillor McClement, is this your question?
Can I save it for later?
Would you like me to remind you what it is?
I've got a question that well, 3 questions, and I will respond to it, but any specifics I will reply in writing.
Right, okay.
What's your second question, Councillor?
Right, 2.3.2. Is it acceptable to ask children as young as 11 to walk more than a mile to catch a bus to school in an urban area? And how does this sit with protecting children in the borough?
The simple answer would be yes. We obviously abide by the statutory duty
Did you walk a
to...
mile to...
I did, yes. I lived at the bottom of Trench and walked to Rockwood Wood School, which would be over a mile. And obviously it feeds into our healthy lifestyles as well. So yes, I think it's perfectly acceptable, and we do abide by the statutory duties.
Indeed you do.
Your third question and your final one?
2.3.3, pride in your high street. Could the cabinet member explain why the statement in the report was not checked with the relevant parish councils, as in 4.10 in the report, the Donington events attributed to Pride in Your High Street had no involvement from Pride in Your High Street, and basically it was completely and utterly misleading.
I will reply in writing to that to that point. But obviously, Donington has benefited massively from Pride in Your High Street. So obviously, there were lots of the Easter events which wouldn't have been able to take place without this fund, creating new skills, which young people really enjoyed. Obviously, also it's helping with the library facilities as well and the Lifelong Learning Centre. So I'm very surprised, actually, that you would highlight that and that you wouldn't be welcoming that into your local area, because I know in my own town of Oakengates, we've really embraced what Pride in Your High Street's had to offer, and I'm very, very disappointed that you would use it to score points.
But it's inaccurate.
Thank you, Councillor Doug Moore. That's your 3 questions. And no further questions. Councillor Ian Fletcher, final question.
I didn't think the 30 minutes had gone so quickly. My question is on item 2.2.1, financial management report. I asked a question last time about the previous financial reports, which I've had a reply from the relevant cabinet member. I'm most grateful for that.
Councillor Fletcher, can I remind you, we're moving on to that next, the financial management report, board report.
Yes, I know, but I still have a question. I feel that the money for St George's was 650,000. They've delayed 300,000 to last year, so there's 350,000 left for this year. The cabinet members told me they've only spent 59,000, so there's 290,000, £697 in the money for St George's, which doesn't seem to be allocated there yet. I'm worried that St George's is going to lose the money that's been allocated to it. Perhaps the cabinet member could tell me what's going to happen to it.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. I'll provide a written response and an assurance that St George's will not lose out. You'd have noted from my response to you actually on the funding for St George's that only 59,000 has been spent of the original 650,000 allocation. You'll have seen all of the other good things that have gone on in St George's, mainly through the Pride in the Community programme, which I note the opposition voted against. But there is an absolute assurance there that St George's will get that You'll also see from my response that actually there's been over £10,000 worth of officer time dedicated to St George's 2 to ensure that it gets the full benefit of this money and that we actually see the Gower Centre open for the community of St George's to enjoy.
No further questions, then we'll move on to back into item 9, which is the Appendix D, Financial Management Report. Councillor Carter.
Thank you, Speaker. I'd just like to move the recommendations, please.
Seconded. Any debate on it? Okay, can we agree the report, or do you want to? All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? No, it's carried. All right. Yes. Appendix E, the Youth Justice Plan. Paul.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Youth offending partnerships have a statutory duty to produce an annual Youth Justice Plan, which is submitted to the Youth Justice Board for England and Wales in accordance with the directions of the Secretary of State. The Youth Justice Plan is prepared on an annual basis on behalf of Herefordshire Council, Shropshire Council, Telford and Wrekin Council and Worcestershire Council in accordance with the guidance Youth Justice Plans YJB practice note for youth offending partnerships. The Youth Justice Plan sets out how youth justice services across West Mercia are structured and funded and identifies key actions to address identified risks to services, to service delivery and improvement. The plan outlines the partnership's priorities for 2016-17 and provides commentary on the 3 national performance indicators for youth offending services. Rate of first-time entrance to the youth justice system. The rate has increased in 3 of the 4 local authority areas between 2014 and 15, but the reasons for this are as yet unclear. One of the priorities for 16-17 will be to investigate this and establish the reasons behind the increased rates. The number and rate of custodial sentences. In 2016, there was 1 custodial sentence in Telford, equating to a rate of 0.06. This compares favourably with the West Mercia rate of 0.14 and the national rate of 0.37. The proportion of young people reoffending in the year ending June 2010, there were 370 offenders in the cohort and 337 reoffences, compared with a cohort of 140 with 168 reoffences in 2014. The number of actual reoffences have therefore decreased by 50% between 2010 and 2014. The hosting arrangements for the service transferred to the office of the West Mercia Police and Crime Commissioner, who mentioned to me that he voted on that as a Worcester councillor, and then he finds out that he's got responsibility for it now. Sometimes us politicians are hoisted, aren't we? This happened on the 1st of April 2016 as part of the governance structures. Telford and Wrekin Council have delegated responsibility to oversee the implementation of the plan to the Community Safety Partnership. This will support the delivery of the Youth Justice Plan by realigning local priorities with Community Safety Plan and the Police and Crime Plan to reduce offending and reoffending. This will also work towards understanding behaviours related to offending that will manage the demand on high-cost services. So the recommendations are before you, that the Youth Justice Plan 2016-17 be recommended to full council for approval and endorsement, and West Mercia YOS responsibilities are noted, and that the council delegates responsibility to the Community Safety Partnership to oversee the implementation of the Youth Justice Plan. Thank you, Speaker.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Gilly Reynolds. Any debate? No debate? All in favour, please show. Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. We now move to Appendix F, which is the Enterprise Telford. That's Councillor Lee Carter.
Thank you, Speaker. I'd like to move the recommendations, please.
Councillor Sean Davis, the second.
I'll second, reserve my right.
Any debate? No? All those in favour, please show. All those against? Any abstentions? No? Right, we've done Appendix G. We've had a good debate on that one. Appendix H then, recommendations from, it's item 10, recommendations from boards and committees. The Audit Committee. Councillor Rob Sloan.
Well, I'm looking for cross-party support, but after tonight, I'm not even convinced I'll get it on this chair. This is the start of a process to sort out the succession arrangements for the external auditors as set out in the paper following the demise of the Audit Commission. We stay with KPMG until the end of the contract. And I think the paper fairly sets out the advantages and disadvantages of the three options that the Audit Committee looked at its meeting. Can I stress, Chair, we're clearly offering option 3 as the best way forward, and it's actually the only way forward if you want to make two choices would involve some independence, if not full independence of the appointment of auditors. But I think you pays your money and takes your choice. It is the start of the process. It is just to give because we haven't got delegated authority to go through the complete process as an audit committee. So it is to continue the work and to bring back our final recommendations in a year's time. So with those thoughts, Chair, I move the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Sahota to second.
I second this recommendation.
Any debate? Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Speaker. I didn't want to disappoint Rob at all about that, but I'd like to reassure him because it is Rob and he's got an honest face and he's always been pretty good to us. I think we are actually going to support his recommendation of that. Thank you.
Any debate? You want to debate it? No, hand up. All those in favour, please show. All those against? Any abstentions? That's carried. We got to too fast now. I've lost myself. Appendix I now, the Boundary Review Committee. This is where it comes to a stop, probably.
Well, still wearing my honest face, but probably anticipating less cross-party support. At the recent meeting of the Boundary Committee, we considered the recommendations from the commissioners about the proposals that involve our area. And obviously that involves a little bit further than our area. We do believe that they have got it right. Again, I'm not going to get into arguments about whether we should have the number of MPs or not that we've got, but given there is going to be a reduction, so we believe that they have come up with the right mix. The proposals as they stand would mean that would be less disruption for our area in that Hadley and Montgomery would move, one of the areas that I represent, and Donington would move, but that actually would be fairly minor compared to some constituencies in the country. We do believe that the area of Bridge North Wellington Wrekin could be a workable area, albeit a little large, but there are some very large constituencies being proposed around the country. And again, inevitably, if you're going to reduce from 650 to 600, you are going to see bigger constituencies. But we believe that Wellington does have something in common with Newport, with Shifnal, with Albrighton, with Bridge North. They're market towns, so we think there is some commonality there. It doesn't fit. Just obviously, Telford alone would be too big. So we would ask you to support our recommendations, including the Bridge North Wellington and Wrekin, as you've seen tonight, is a bit of a mouthful. That the Wrekin and Bridge North would be a better title. Oppose Philip Dunn, who wants to remove the Wrekin and just call it Bridge North, and certainly oppose Owen Patterson, who wants to remove us from the map altogether.
seconder? Do you wish to speak on Angela? Nigel Dugmore.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, I'd like to say that we do partially support you on this, Rob, but we would like to take a vote on both parts, A and B, separately, because while we welcome the review, the national review, with recommendation A, we are happy to support that, although some Wellingtonians have welcomed the inclusion of Wellington in the constituency name. However, we agree it does make it rather long, and Wellington has never actually been included in the constituency name. So we're happy to support the proposal A, although I'm sure I might get stabbed in the back by some Wellingtonians that are around. With regards to recommendation B, we're not happy on supporting that, as there are alternative proposals, and we're of the view that obviously the alternative proposals would be preferable. I mean, it is a general view, though, that if the Boundary Commission proposals are adopted, then it'll only be for a relatively short period of time, because of the changes in population and the demographics, and as the borough expands. So we can see at some time in the future that there will be possibly a Telford North and Telford South seat, but perhaps the Boundary Commission aren't happy with that at the moment, because the town is of insufficient size. So, Mr. Speaker, if we could vote on the two proposals, well, then we're quite happy to support recommendation A, but not happy to support recommendation B.
Thank you. Councillor Ian Fletcher.
Thank you, Chairman. Following on from what my colleague has said, I can't support recommendation part B. Therefore, I would formally request that you use your position as Speaker to separate the two parts of the motion so we can vote on them separately, because part B, the recommendations, I can't support. I have alternative views, and I have expressed these at the Boundary Commission that I wasn't satisfied, and asked for it to be recorded in the minutes of that meeting. And I will have already made recommendations to the Boundary Commission to amend the proposals for Telford. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. I'll listen to the debate. Councillor Clare. The microphone on its way, Liz.
Oh, sorry. I can shout loud.
Yeah, but small as a deaf, you know. Hey, what are you saying?
Is that working? Yeah. I actually, if you go back, what was it, 4 years when it was looked at before? This is almost the same proposal as it was then. I welcomed it then and will endorse it again. You will, if you look at the map, you've predominantly got what I call an urban constituency and a rural one. I don't think there's anybody in this chamber that hasn't been faced with a conflict, either out in the rural and then to the urban, where you've got the same politician trying to reconcile the two. So for me, this gives a real constituency. And I went to the Boundary Commission, and all right, in simplistic terms, what I'm saying is that when an MP is actually elected, then they have a chance to concentrate either on urban issues or on rural issues. And I equate it that you wouldn't ask a brain surgeon to set a leg when they were in hospital. Both doctors, but different specialisms. And the only other thing that I will say, and probably the colleagues here might not agree with me, is for me, the name Wrekin should be standalone. I said that at the formal inquiry up at Shrewsbury. It's a personal point of view. Why highlight Bridge North just because they've come into the constituency? You never called it Telford and Shifnal when they came in. So for me, don't highlight any. Or can it be the Wrekin and Wellington? Can it be the Wrekin and Newport? Because they all have the same sort of identity. But for me, this should have happened 4 years ago. And it should happen now. Thank you.
Any further points? No, Councillor Sloan to reply.
In view of the lateness of the hour, I waive my reply.
Thank you. Yeah. I've considered the request to do it in 2 parts, and I'm quite happy to do that because it makes some sense because they are 2 separate things. So we're now going to vote on recommendation A. Those in favour of recommendation A, please show. Anybody against? No? Any abstentions? Right. Recommendation B. Those in favour, please show. Those against, please show. I think that's quite clearly carried. Okay. Thank you for that. We now get down to the questions that have been submitted. Now, you'll see on the paper that 3 questions are very similar on the same subject. What I propose to do is ask the 3 questioners to raise their question, and they will be replied one after the other. They'll get 1 reply from the cabinet member, and then the questioners can actually have a supplementary as per the rules. So, Councillor Ian Fletcher, your question first.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the Cabinet Member for Transport, Customer and Neighbourhood Services please advise residents of Telford what lessons have you learnt from the delays that have been incurred during the work being carried out on Limekiln Roundabout?
Thank you. Councillor Tim Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And for Councillor Watling's benefit, I confess I am a user of the Clock Tower Roundabout, so I wait to find out what I'm going to be accused of. Please, can the Cabinet Member for Transport, Customer and Neighbourhood Services give an update of progress to completion of the Clock Tower Roundabout works?
Councillor Terry Kiernan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the Cabinet Member for Transport, Customer and Neighbourhood Services confirm the costs so far for the construction of the new roundabout at Shawbirch? Very slow progress seems to be made in getting this project completed, with very few men actually working and machines standing idle. In fact, only 2 or 3 men on site at one time, and they were only reseeding with grass and not. What are they waiting for? The snow is about to arrive before the tarmac is laid. Are we going to get a surprise in the middle of the island, not another magic roundabout?
Thank you, Councillor Kiernan. Councillor McCameron.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will answer all 3 of them, but first I'll give some background of the case. Telford and Wrekin Council was successful in securing 20 million of funding with the Marches Local Enterprise Partnership to invest into our road network to provide capacity to cater for future growth. Now, these projects are major undertakings and they all have to be delivered within 1-year deadline due to the funding from the LEP and needed to be spent by March 2017. I think it's important that we therefore celebrate the fact that we've secured 20 million extra funding for this borough and won this, I have to say, ahead of other councils competing for investment. And that is on top of the investments made by this council in addition to the Department for Transport funding, and is a testament to the excellent work of our officers from the transport team and this administration in securing this funding. The funding has been used to increase capacity at 6 major junctions: Shawbirch, Limekiln, Clock Tower, Ketley Brook, Trench Lock and Randley Interchange. All of these junctions act as key gateways to the borough and are situated on our busiest roads. On the issue of Limekiln Roundabout, work started there on site in February 2016 with an anticipated completion date of July 2016. All utility companies who needed to arrange diversions were notified by the council back in April 2015. That's nearly 12 months before starting on site, and of their need to dedicate appropriate resources to this project. All of the utility companies hit their deadlines as agreed, with only Severn Trent having failed repeatedly to hit theirs. In August, I personally wrote a detailed letter of complaint to the Chief Exec of Severn Trent, Liv Garfield, and she replied within a day, promising that her officers would be committed to provide all the necessary resources to undertake the water redirection and connections by the end of September. Now, since that promise was made, I have made a number of conference calls with Severn Trent senior managers during October, as they had missed their September deadline, and they assured me that they would complete by the end of October. They did not, and a further letter of complaint was sent last week to the Chief Exec by myself and the leader, confirming that we are taking legal advice in order to pursue legal action to secure compensation for the impact of these delays. I also insisted that the Chief Exec actually personally guarantees a date for completion for the Severn Trent works. I also invited her to attend this full council meeting tonight to answer in person for this continued poor performance of her organisation and to apologise directly to all of us here. Members will know that I issued a press release on Monday naming and shaming Severn Trent for their appalling level of service, which is impacting on our residents, businesses and the reputation of our council. On Tuesday, I received a personal response from Liv Garfield, who has committed her organisation to a new delivery date of the 5th of December. And I'm disappointed to report that she's declined to attend this meeting. If this revised deadline is adhered to, then our contractor, McPhillips, have confirmed that they will be able to complete the works at Limekiln, weather permitting, before Christmas. Now, I completely understand and share the frustration that motorists, local residents and businesses have been experiencing due to the length of time the works have been on site. In our ongoing discussions with Severn Trent, it is clear that they are accountable only to their shareholders and have shown little understanding of the delays and misery they have caused due to their ongoing incompetence and poor performance. The council has done all that it can to assist them, encourage them, and now actually force them to do the works. And our transport team have done everything possible to work with Severn Trent to get this done. Indeed, our officers have undertaken a review to see what lessons, if any, there are to be learned. And I am absolutely clear that they have fulfilled all of the criteria required by all the utility companies and given them ample notice to work on our sites. And we have procured 2 excellent contractors, McPhillips and Fitzgerald, to deliver these projects on our behalf. And I can tell you they are as frustrated as I am and this council. As I stated earlier, with other utility companies, I've undertaken their works within the timescale specified. So the delay is solely down to Severn Trent, and we will be taking formal action as a result, while holding them to account to deliver at both Limekiln and Shawbirch. I think I'll move on to Councillor Kieran's question, which is about Shawbirch, because I think it follows on from Limekiln. To date, the council has spent 1.7 million of the LEP funding against an expected outturn of 2.2 million for Shawbirch roundabout. The anticipated completion date for this scheme was mid-November. However, we have also faced issues with Severn Trent at this junction, which has prevented our contractor from completing the works. These issues at Shawbirch have formed part of the discussions with Severn Trent. The anticipated completion date for Shawbirch is now the end of January 2017. And while I appreciate that this delay is again frustrating to motorists, local businesses and residents, we are doing all that we can to keep pressure on Severn Trent and our contractors to deliver. In response to Councillor Nelson, the works to Clock Tower are on track for completion by February 2017, subject to ongoing weather conditions. Our contractor has recently completed the ducting, drainage and curbing works. There have been some issues with utility companies here, but not on the same scale as Shorebirch and Limekiln. This has mainly been the result of unforeseen utility services being found in the ground once the work started. However, this has not impacted on the final deadline for completion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
We surrender, Speaker.
You surrender. You can't surrender because
I'm sorry, we asked the questions now.
It's due a supplementary. Councillor Pesci, your supplementary.
I never surrender. I've had to go through Limekiln Bank many a time.
Yeah.
But it's quite clear, the one lesson that you didn't mention that you've learned is that you don't seem to have a mechanism to make sure the utility companies do the work when it's supposed to be done. You're having to, after the fact, where they failed, go and talk about suing them and getting the money back. Will you assure the residents of Telford that where you're doing major work like this, which involves utilising or the work by some of these utility companies, that you will make sure that you have contracts with them for them to do the work on time when it's needed, with penalty clauses in those contracts? Because my residents have been affected for, I don't know, I can't count it. I think we're going up towards 10 months, so we're going to hit the 12 months limit very soon. And they are really frustrated.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can share your frustration, Councillor Fletcher. I actually go and pick my grandchildren up from Red Hill Primary three times a week, so I do go around that roundabout quite often. I think I answered your question earlier on. I mean, you know, we all utility companies who needed to arrange diversions were notified by us in April 2015. We went through all the appropriate resources to deal with it. And this was done with all the other utility companies as well. So appropriate action was taken very, very early on. It's just, I'm sorry to say, they're just failure to deal with the problem, but hopefully, and sadly I've had to come out publicly, and it's not something that I wanted to do, because, you know, I think it's important to have good partnership working with our utility companies, and, you know, I think sort of Severn Trent are admitting that there's lessons to be learned from this, and we'll be speaking to them after this is going on. But obviously we'll keep you updated on progress, but we will be keeping them obviously to that 5th of December date.
Thank you. Councillor Nelson, you've got a supplementary?
Yeah, absolutely. No surrender. You're not supposed to say that. I think you're not supposed to say that, are you?
It's been noted, Charlie.
Oh, hang on.
You got it.
Bit of a glass crisis, Mr. Speaker. Sorry about that. We'll get there. Thank you for the clarification, Madam Cabinet Member. As I understood it, for the clock tower, it's February 17. And that clarification is valuable to us in here and the members, the residents of Newport, because the signs saying when motorists could expect completion have been taken down, and I've photographed all 4 entrances to the roundabout to check that, and I can't find them. And when I looked at the website only last week, I thought that completion was due November this year. And I must admit, I thought that was a bit of a rush to get it done by then. At the briefing that we attended, given by Highways telling us about the growth project, specifically, I remember the officer describing that the roundabout's being made bigger, but Clock Tower roundabout is not being made much bigger. And the reason is, he said with touching honesty, is because there's a petrol station and a substation in the way. other members would have been present at that briefing and they will recall those words. It's not a crisis, it's just the point is for the people of Newport, that's about as close to a station as we're going to get.
What's your supplementary question?
I'll come to it. This is the background and context so the cabinet member understands. The cabinet member did give us a very extensive briefing, did she not? The supplementary is to cut right to the chase for the speaker's benefit. These investments are supposed to be guaranteeing free-flowing traffic until 2013. That's what the website says.
13.
The plan period, the local plan, 2031. Thank you. 2031.
Yeah. Thank you.
They are supposed to be guaranteeing more free-flowing traffic until 2031. There are another 1,089 houses due for Newport in the cabinet papers relating to school catchment areas, in addition to the houses already made. This plan is already under attack. There's an appeal next week for an additional 170 houses out with that plan. What margin of error? What percentage of housing, in addition to the plan, what further changes to catchment areas have been factored in to future-proof no congestion at the clock tower?
A difficult one to answer. It's not even a catchment area. I think we'll just get you a written response on that.
Councillor Kiernan, you're waving you are surrendering. Thank you, Councillor Clements.
No, our tail's up now, we're not
Going round.
Peace in our time.
I understand they're going to bring back that programme Magic Roundabout. As long as we don't get one like they've got in Swindon, the Magic Roundabout there, we're quite happy. But personally speaking, I use all 3 roundabouts and I've never been able to look there yet. I must use the right time of day. Anyway, let's move on. Motions, none received, and therefore I'll call the meeting to an end. Thank you all for attending.